I am basically the lead designer on the KTM side of things, but I work for Kiska, and I guess most of you all know that all of the KTM motorcycles, they're not designed in-house at KTM, but they're designed in our company at Kiska. Doesn't mean we're totally separated, because we have probably the best working relationship that I can possibly imagine between these two kind of companies. Just to give you a short introduction to what Kiska do, I think this is kind of beneficial for today. Kiska stands for performance products, and I think our most our focus these days is really the dynamic performance product. I think that's a benefit to us, because if we were an in-house design team for KTM, we would be just looking at KTM motorcycles every single day. And actually, every other day, we get to do something completely different. So I guess you guys have seen the projects that we did for Opel last year, as well as skis for Kessler, AKG, Hetero. All of this stuff is all part of our everyday work. But of course, our core customer, our core client is KTM, and this is where our heritage is somehow, and this is where we stay true. This is me. Short introduction to me. I've now been 5 years with Kiska, and 5 years specifically working on the KTM project, which is an absolute dream, of course. Some of the highlights of the work that I've been involved in, or I've been the lead designer of, they're listed up here on the board. You can imagine top left, top right. These are some of the real highlights. Quite fun to work on. So, where's this guy? I guess you all know who he is. He's my boss, and he's still there, and of course he still plays a huge role in the development within KTM, but also on the design side. He's always there for me when we have questions. So let's get to the main point of today. This is the 390 Jeep that you see standing before you. And I've stuck these three pictures together because I find it really interesting. On the left, we've got the 125 Jeep. This is the entry bike in our naked bike lineup. On the right, we've got the bike that's on the other side of the 390. That's the 690. And our job was somehow to position a bike between these guys. So for me, the biggest question that I would have if I was sitting in your shoes right now was, but the bike is somehow based so heavily on the 125. Is that really the correct way to do it? Yeah, definitely it is, because when we analysed what we'd made with the 125 and the 200, and we looked at this amazing frame and fork and chassis and the suspension package that we had, we put a 125 engine in that. Is that really the best way to utilise this? Actually, no. The perfect usage for this package is the 400cc engine. 375. Sorry. Yeah. So in that respect, I think actually it's really the perfect usage. And when you look at the briefing that we got from KTM, light, fun, agile, compact, and affordable, I think all of the others would have been achievable if we'd have used a different base. But this last point, this point that makes this bike so accessible for everyone worldwide, actually, as Thomas already said, is the fact that it's based upon the package that we already had existing in the 125 and 290. Good. I'm now going to give you a quick design analysis of why this bike looks like it does. And I think you all know this. This is the 690 stunt that we presented way back in 2007, I think it was. Yeah, this was quite a big hit, and the reason it's quite important was this was the first time the KTM actually presented a naked bike on a show that wasn't the Supermoto, apart from the Super Duke. I think the Super Duke is so far away, such a premium top product, that this was the first time that KTM made really a study into naked bikes for the masses, for most people. So I want to tell you about why it was so important, and this is really the nitty-gritty design analysis now. I don't want to bore you too much with it, but I've put in the wheels, and I've just highlighted the tank and seat, and you can see that these two elements combined together, sitting perfectly proportioned between the wheels. This is what we read when we look at the bike. This is why we see it as a compact, small, brutal, aggressive machine. It's this proportion, and this is actually such a difficult balance to achieve. And it's why you see it so many times when, I don't want to mention any other manufacturers, but some Japanese bikes, when they come out and you see it and it's a naked bike, you think, yeah, it's kind of good, but maybe proportionally there's something. This is the reason. They didn't really look at it in enough detail to come up with the. Okay, a little bit more on that. This is if you just take the main feature lines of those two, you can see that it's very forward-leaning, aggressive proportion. And then, once you've got all that sorted, you need to make sure that everything else is as packed together as possible, that everything stays compact, and you've got this super aggressive, almost ball of a machine. Good, and then we get on to how we started, the first day that we actually started designing, and these are the first scribbles that you can see here, and already at that stage, I just highlighted something here. You can see the thing I was just talking about before, it already starts to happen in the sketches of the first sketches. And this is somehow the development sketches that happened after that, and you can already see the theme is pretty strong. Again, this is getting more into detail, and suddenly we have to really make sure now that this thing works on the package that we've been given. And again, this is what I showed you before on the 690 stunt. It's the same layout, it's the same idea, but actually we made it better with this back. So we almost highlighted this feature by wrapping it in the bodywork instead of just cutting this as tank. This you see. We highlighted this shape and proportion, which on a small bike helps to make it feel more like a serious bike, more real bike. So this is the next step. Once the key sketches are selected and we're pretty confident with the direction, we put that one-to-one on the package that we get from the guys, the team at R&D, to make sure it still works, to make sure it fits. And you can see here, the frame's in place, the engine is in place, all the suspension elements are in place. Looks good, looks like it's going to fit. Then we get one of these from R&D, and this is the first prototype. Frame, engine, suspension package is pretty much set up. Geometry is almost there. And on top of this, we pile our clay. And I'm not going to bore you too much with the clay process because I'm sure you've already seen it from all the manufacturers, but this is somehow halfway through the clay process of the 125 back then. But it's also, I would say, where the real emotion and feel comes into the product. Because here, yeah, it's cool, it looks good, it looks great, but you don't really know how it's going to look as a real product, as a motorbike, when it's standing in front of you. So it's at this point when you really think, okay, this is when it starts to live, this is where the emotion comes into it. But just to be really sure, I take some photos of these things, and then we paint them again in Photoshop, so we get more realism back, colour, all of this. And then you start to think, yeah, it's kind of working. And this is when the clay is finished, we paint the clay, or we use some foil over the clay, to really give an impression of how the finished bike will look. And actually, from this distance, it kind of looks like a finished bike now. And then we really go into detail, and we try to help the guys in R&D to construct the thing. So this is just one volume, huh? This is just a lump of clay. But how are we going to make that into the plastics, the parts that we see today? Well, we try to help. And when that's been taken on board and the engineers have done the first step of work, we're presented with this, and this is called a P2. It's the second prototype of the bike. This is a working prototype, and at this stage, the guys can go riding. And instead of just sitting on a lump of clay and thinking, I don't know if it's going to work in real life, they can go riding. And it's the first time that we see what we did in our sketches on the road. But even at that stage, it's difficult to really see how it's going to look in production. So even at that stage, it's back into Photoshop and using more sketches just to make sure it's really on target. And then it's playtime, because yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of a vision of how it will be. But how are we going to present this? How are we going to present it to you guys, actually? So we go back to the drawing board, and I think these were some of the key sketches for why we came up with our show bikes that we showed back then, and that was these two bikes, which I'm sure you remember, and they were a huge hit. On the EICMA show, that's when we released the first models of the 125, and that's the first production 125, which of course finally has evolved into the bike you see standing before you, which is the 390 Duke. And yeah, I think actually the list of requirements that I got from KTM, I think we've fulfilled that, and I'm very confident that you will experience all of those keywords today.